Welcome to the YouTube channel Tales of Deception, a place where we explore fascinating stories and the hidden layers within family and social relationships, helping us broaden our perspectives on life. Be sure to subscribe to join us in experiencing these profound stories every day. Today, I want to share with you the story of a young woman, where family secrets and betrayal from a loved one forever changed her most important relationships. Let's dive into this emotional journey together.
I'm Ella, and I've always been the quiet one, the bookworm, the person who preferred solitude over crowded rooms. While other kids thrived in groups, I found comfort in my own thoughts, my own world. My father, however, always understood me. He was the only one who truly believed in me, who always saw potential even when I couldn't see it in myself. He used to say that no matter how tough life got, I could make it through. His words meant everything to me. He was my anchor, my constant in a world that felt like it was always changing. He was the one who stayed up late to help me with my homework, no matter how tired he was. He was the one who cheered for me at every soccer game, his voice always the loudest in the crowd, even when I was the last one to score. He was the one who would sit by my side, reassuring me that I could become whoever I wanted to be. To me, he was invincible. And then, one day, he wasn't. The day my father died, my world was torn apart. It wasn't a sudden illness, nor was it a random tragedy. It was an accident. He was there, full of life one minute, laughing, smiling, telling me about his day, and in the next, he was gone. Just like that. A car crash, a phone call, and my entire life was flipped upside down in the span of a few hours. I didn't understand it at first. I thought maybe he was just in the hospital, maybe just hurt, maybe he'd be home soon. But as the hours passed, reality sank in with a heaviness I couldn't escape. I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't breathe properly. How could something like this happen? How could he be gone? I was 14. The day felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I remember the police knocking at the door, their faces grim and somber. My mom, already a shell of the woman she used to be, was crying, hysterical, her body shaking in a way I had never seen before. And me, just standing there, frozen, not understanding. Not fully understanding that the man who had been my rock was never coming back. The air felt thick with sorrow, as though the very atmosphere was mourning with me. The world around me seemed to collapse, everything turning hazy and distant, as though I were drowning in a sea of grief I couldn't escape. For the next 2 years, it was just my mom and me. Or at least, it was supposed to be. But it wasn't the same. My mom, the woman who used to tell me everything would be okay, who used to hold me when I cried, was no longer there in the way I needed her. She became distant, lost in her own grief. It was as if she had retreated into herself, her walls thicker than ever. I tried, I really did, to reach out to her. I tried to tell her that I needed her, that I missed him too, that I was struggling. But it was like talking to a wall. Her eyes were hollow, her voice flat, as if she were just going through the motions, too numb to feel anything. It was as if the woman I once knew had vanished, leaving behind a stranger. I couldn't reach her. And it hurt more than anything, more than the grief itself. It felt like she had abandoned me, like I was on my own in a world that no longer made sense. I wanted to scream, to shout at her to wake up, to tell her that I needed her more than ever, but I just couldn't. I felt invisible. And then, one day, everything changed again. My mom met John. At first, I tried to be optimistic. Maybe this was the fresh start we both needed. Maybe this new relationship could fill the void left by Dad's death. But I quickly realized I was wrong. John wasn't just someone who brought comfort or joy into our lives, he was someone who brought conflict, control, and cruelty. He wasn't kind, and he didn't understand me. 6 months later, they were married. And suddenly, I had a new family. 2 stepbrothers, Lucas and Henry. They were older, more experienced with life, and completely different from me. I was supposed to be happy about the change, but instead, I felt a deeper sense of isolation than ever before. I tried to be optimistic. I really did. I wanted to believe that maybe I could make this work. Maybe I could fit into this new family, maybe I could find my place. But the more I tried, the more I realized I didn't belong. I felt like an outsider in my own home. John was cold, distant, and dismissive. He didn't care to understand who I was. My mom, the woman who had once been my everything, had become a stranger. Wrapped up in her new life with John and his sons. I was left to fend for myself, feeling smaller and smaller with each passing day. It wasn't just the new house. Or the new people, it was the sense that my mom, my real mom, had disappeared into someone else. Someone who didn't need me. And so, here I was. Alone. Invisible. Struggling in a world that felt colder than ever. John made it clear that I wasn't part of his world. I wasn't allowed to be myself. Instead, I became the housemaid, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of everything while Lucas and Henry did nothing. Every day, I felt myself being drained. I tried to speak up, tried to say that I couldn't take this anymore, but every time I did, John would shut me down with his smug smile. You should be grateful, Ella. Not everyone has a roof over their head. Those words felt like a slap to my face. It wasn't that I wasn't grateful. But how could I be when no one in this house truly cared for me? I wasn't their daughter, I wasn't important to them. I was just the one doing everything without being recognized. And worst of all? I wasn't protected by my mom. She didn't stand up for me, not even once. She turned away, pretending not to hear my cries, not noticing the exhaustion and desperation in my eyes. My mom, the one person I thought would always be there for me, was gone, lost in her own world with John. Every day that passed, I felt smaller. I didn't know what else to do. My mom was no longer the person I used to love. John wasn't the father I wanted. Who was I in this house? I no longer felt like a daughter, no longer a part of the family. I was an outsider. Unnoticed and unseen in my own home. Then, one evening, my life was turned upside down again. John and my mom announced that we were moving. They were selling the house. We're moving to a better place, John said, casually, as though it was just another ordinary decision in life. The house that my father had built. The house filled with memories of him, was gone. Just like that. Everything I had known, everything I had cherished, was now nothing more than a fading memory. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could they do this? How could they make a decision like this without asking me? No choices were left for me. No one cared about how I felt. The feeling of being abandoned, forgotten, thrown away, it was the worst pain I had ever felt. This house wasn't just a house to me. It was where I grew up, where I shared countless memories with my father. It was all I had left of him. And now, it was being taken from me. My home, my memories, my life, everything was being ripped away. I stood there, unable to do anything but feel the emptiness swelling inside of me. I had nothing left. No father, no home, no love from my mom. My mom didn't look at me. She kept doing whatever she was doing, as if everything was fine. How could it be fine when my entire world was falling apart? I couldn't understand why my mom couldn't feel my pain. Why couldn't she see that I was losing everything? Once again, I felt like I was the only one suffering in this family. No one understood me. No one saw me. It was just me, standing in the ruins of my life, unsure of what to do next. The move was quick. We relocated to a bigger house, but it didn't feel like home. It felt cold, empty, and unfamiliar. The walls were vast, but they didn't echo with laughter or warmth. The house was bigger, but it lacked the sense of belonging I had hoped for. There were no memories of my father here, no fragments of the life we had built. Every room felt foreign. As if I were walking through someone else's home. The transition to a new school was even worse. Lucas and Henry made friends effortlessly, their laughter and voices filling every room they entered. They were the center of attention, admired and accepted by everyone. I, on the other hand, felt invisible. I tried to blend in, but no matter how hard I tried, I could never get noticed. I spent most of my time in the library, surrounded by the silence of the pages, trying to drown out the loneliness that gnawed at me. The smell of books and the quiet hum of students was the only comfort I had. But no matter how many books I read or how deeply I lost myself in my studies, I couldn't shake the feeling of being completely alone. College had always been my dream. My escape. The one thing I could hold on to. The one thing that could help me get out of this suffocating place and start fresh. I would leave all this behind, the empty house, the tension with my mom, the indifference of John and his sons. I could create a life for myself where I wouldn't have to hide behind books, where I could be seen for who I really was. But then, everything came crashing down. One day, as I was going through old papers, I stumbled upon something unexpected, a letter. It was from my father's bank, detailing an account that had been opened for my education. My heart skipped a beat as I read the document. There it was, the proof that my father had set aside money for me, money that was supposed to be used for college. A large sum. Enough to cover tuition at any school I wanted to attend. I stared at the letter for a long time, trying to absorb what I was seeing. This was the opportunity one had dreamed about. My dad had planned for me to go to college. He had saved for it. He believed in me. The excitement began to build inside me, a rush of hope and possibility that I hadn't felt in years. I could do this. I could go to college. I could escape. Finally, something was going to go right. I didn't waste a second. I went straight to my mom, eager to tell her the good news. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, and now it was finally here. I was nervous, but hopeful, trying to hold on to the excitement. But a part of me feared what would happen when I brought it up. I approached her cautiously, trying to steady my breath. "Mom, I need to talk to you about college," I said. My voice barely above a whisper. "I found out that Dad set aside money for my education. I can finally go to college." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She didn't smile. Her face remained cold and distant, like a mask I couldn't break through. I waited for her to say something, but she didn't. Instead, she finally spoke. Her voice flat and emotionless. "We don't have money for college, Ella." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Her words didn't make sense. I had just found the money. The proof that my dad had saved it for me. How could she say that? How could she dismiss it so easily? I tried to push back, to explain what I had found, but she didn't even look at me. It was like she was already shutting me out before I could finish my sentence. "Your father left a small amount, yes," she continued, her words cutting through the air like a dull blade. "But we've been using it to support you all these years." My heart sank. The truth hit me like a heavy blow, and for a moment, I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet. The money wasn't gone, it had been used, not for my education, not for my future, but for things I had no idea about. I had been so close to having everything I dreamed of, so close to getting out. To building a life of my own, but it had all been taken away. I couldn't speak at first. The shock had paralyzed me. My mind raced, trying to process what she had just said. "What do you mean, used up?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Where did it go? What did you use it for?" She didn't answer right away. The silence between us was suffocating. I could feel the truth hanging in the air, thick with unspoken words. Her face was an unreadable mask, and I knew she wasn't going to give me the answer I was hoping for. The realization set in like a heavy weight. The money wasn't gone by accident. It wasn't used for something necessary. It had been spent on things I couldn't even begin to understand. Things that had never been mentioned. Things that had been prioritized over my future. My heart pounded, the anger rising within me like a tidal wave. How could you do this? I whispered, my voice barely audible. But the fury in my chest was unmistakable. How could you take everything he left for me and spend it on yourself? Her face paled, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, guilt, maybe? But it was too late. I couldn't process the words, the lies that had been hidden from me for so long. The truth was undeniable now. The money, the future I had thought was mine, had all been taken away. And there was no going back. But the worst part came when I discovered that my mother had taken the money my dad had saved for me and used it for herself. Vacations. A new car. A lavish lifestyle, all funded by my future. I couldn't believe it. I thought I had misread the documents, or maybe I was dreaming. But the more I looked at the bank statements, the clearer it became. She had taken the money meant for my college education and spent it on herself, on things that had nothing to do with me, on things that had nothing to do with my future. She had given up on me. On the promises my father had made, for her own selfish needs. I felt my chest tighten, and my stomach churned. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about everything she had promised me. About all the words she had said. It was about my dad's sacrifices, the years of hard work he had put in, all of it used up for nothing more than her own comfort. My world crumbled in that moment. I felt sick to my core. I wasn't just angry. I was heartbroken. I had always believed that no matter what, my mom would always have my back. I thought that no matter what happened, I could trust her. But now, I realized I had been living in a lie. I had to confront her. She had to answer for what she had done. I couldn't let her get away with it. I was done being silent. I was done being the one left behind. It was time for the truth to come out. The tension in the house felt unbearable as I walked into the living room, where she was sitting. Her eyes were focused on the TV, but I could see the unease in her posture, the way her shoulders tensed when she noticed I was standing there. "Where's my college fund, Mom?" I asked. My voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. Her face drained of color, and for the first time in years, I saw a crack in her armor. The mask she had been wearing slipped for just a second. And I knew that she was realizing that I knew the truth. That I knew everything. She stammered, trying to keep her composure. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the documents that Walter, my grandfather, had shown me. The evidence of the $150,000 my dad had set aside for my education. The proof that my mother had stolen it from me. I held them in front of her, watching her face as the reality of it all settled in. "I know about the $150,000, Mom," I said, my voice firm now, though it shook with the intensity of everything I had been holding back. "I know about everything." For a moment, she just stared at me, her expression frozen. Then, it shifted from shock to defiance. Her lips pressed together, her eyes narrowed. And she tried to maintain control, but I could see the panic in her. She knew there was no escaping the truth now. But I didn't care anymore. I had nothing to lose. I wasn't the little girl who needed her love and approval anymore. I wasn't the one who had to sit in silence and accept her betrayal. I had fought for so long to escape this life, to make my own future, and now, I had the power to confront the very person who had kept me trapped. "You lied to me," I said, my voice now filled with a coldness that surprised even me. "You lied about the money, about everything. You didn't just take my future, you stole my chance to have something for myself. You took what was mine." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I could see her struggling, trying to think of something to say, some excuse, some reason to justify her actions. But there was nothing. Not anymore. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. And I knew in that moment that I could never go back. The mother I had once trusted, the one who had promised to protect me, had shattered everything I had ever believed. And the worst part? She didn't even seem sorry. "You don't even care, do you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but the bitterness in it was sharp. "You don't care about the promises Dad made. Or the sacrifices he made for me. You just took it all, and you're not even sorry." She didn't respond. She couldn't. There was nothing she could say to take back what she had done. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't the same person I was before. I had finally seen the truth, and I was done being her victim. Done being the one who had to bear the weight of her lies. This was the end of the road for me. The end of the life I had known with her. I couldn't trust her anymore. I couldn't let her have any more power over me. I was done. And as I turned away, leaving her in the silence that had once felt so familiar, I knew that I was finally free. Free from the guilt. Free from the lies. Free from the person who had taken everything from me. That night, I packed my things. Everything I could carry, just my clothes, a photo album, and a few books. It wasn't much, but it was all I had left. The last remnants of my life, before everything had fallen apart. The things that had once meant something to me were now just possessions I needed to leave behind. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The house, the memories, the lies, I was done with it all. I left without a second thought. The moment I stepped out that door, I felt a weight lift from my chest. I wasn't walking away from just a house. I was walking away from a life of manipulation, deceit, and betrayal. The heavy burden I had been carrying for so long was gone. For the first time in years, I was free. Truly free. Walter, my grandfather, had already helped me find a small apartment. It wasn't much. A small, one-bedroom space with plain walls and barely enough furniture to fill it. But to me, it was a palace. It was mine. It was a place where I didn't have to hide, where I could be myself without fear. There was no more pretending, no more living under someone else's control. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without hesitation, without guilt weighing me down. The relief I felt when I walked through the door of that tiny place was overwhelming. It was as though I had been holding my breath for years, and now, finally, I could exhale. I could stand tall in this small space and know that I was in control of my own future. No more lies. No more fear. No more looking over my shoulder, wondering what would happen next. I was safe. But I wasn't done yet. I had a long road ahead of me. This was just the beginning. The dream of going to college, of building a life on my own terms, was still a distant goal. But now, I had the chance to fight for it. I wasn't going to let everything I had been through stop me. I wasn't going to let the past dictate my future. I started the college application process, with Walter by my side. He didn't just offer me a roof over my head, he gave me hope. He believed in me when I felt like I had nothing left to believe in. He helped me every step of the way, from writing my essays to preparing for interviews. The journey wasn't easy. There were nights when I doubted myself, when I questioned whether I was capable of all this. But Walter was always there, reminding me that I had the strength to do it. He had been through his own struggles, and now, he was passing on that strength to me. 2 weeks later, I was accepted into a prestigious university, just 20 minutes from Walter's house. I had finally made it. I had done it. It felt like a dream, one I had worked so hard for, one that had been so far out of reach for so long. And now, it was mine. When I saw the acceptance letter in my hands, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. It wasn't just a letter. It was proof that I was more than the person my mother had tried to make me feel I was. It was proof that I had the power to change my life, to take control of my destiny. And for the first time, I could see a future ahead of me that wasn't shaped by someone else's choices. As I sat in my small apartment, staring at the letter, I couldn't help but think of my father. I wished he could have been here to see this moment. But I knew he was with me in spirit. He had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And now, I was finally living up to that belief. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be mine. And that was enough. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control. The future was in my hands, and nothing, not my mother, not the lies, not the betrayal, could take that away from me. Years passed. I completed my degree, and for the first time I made real friends, people who accepted me for who I truly was, not the version of me I had to hide behind for so long. The weight of my mother's betrayal no longer crushed me. I had learned to forgive myself, to let go of the anger that had once consumed me, and to trust that the future I was building was my own. At university, I found my place. I thrived in an environment where I was respected for my work, where my thoughts and opinions mattered. I no longer had to shrink into the background, fearful of being ignored or misunderstood. I felt seen. I felt valued. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. I no longer carried the burden of my mother's actions on my shoulders. The bitterness that had once poisoned my heart gradually faded, replaced with a sense of inner peace I had never known. I realized that family wasn't just about blood, it was about the people who truly loved and supported you. Walter, my grandfather, was my family now. He had become my rock, guiding me through the toughest times, never asking for anything in return except for me to be the best version of myself. And in return, I would do everything I could to make him proud. Every Sunday, I spent time with Walter, sharing stories about my dad, laughing about the good memories, and reflecting on the mistakes of the past. He taught me how to let go of the pain. To focus not on the things I had lost, but on the things I had gained. Together, we built new memories, filling the gaps left by my father's absence with love, understanding, and a shared hope for the future. I also realized that the pain of the past, while it would never completely disappear, no longer had the power to define me. It had shaped who I was, yes. But it would not hold me captive. I had learned that sometimes the most painful experiences were the ones that led to the most important transformations. As for my mother, she tried to reach out. She sent messages, left voicemails, and even attempted to visit me. But it was too late. By then, I had already moved on. I had built my own life, one that was mine and mine alone. I no longer needed her approval or validation. I had learned to stand on my own, and I didn't need her to complete me. What she had done could never be forgiven, not because I didn't want to, but because I had learned that forgiveness didn't mean allowing someone back into your life who had hurt you so deeply. It meant freeing yourself from the grip of their actions. Moving forward with your head held high, and not letting the past control your present. I had learned the hardest lesson of all, sometimes. The family you choose is better than the family you're born into. I understood now that love and loyalty aren't about shared blood or history, they're about the people who stand by you. Who believe in you when the world doesn't, who love you without conditions. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever.
And so, the story concludes with a hopeful ending for Ella. After all the struggles and betrayals, she finds peace and a new beginning. What do you think of her journey? How did her story resonate with you? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, so you can join us for the next gripping tale that's sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned for more stories that will inspire, challenge, and move you.